Sapracine have been active in the world is always in search of the mystery archaeologists around the world. Because of their hard work, we can learn some amazing facts of history, we can enrich our knowledge. Take bodies. During the time of the ancient civilization in search of Pratnatapabaita found some bodies are still not able to find out the actual cause of death. Several times, but such information has been disclosed, which has come to know many wonder pills. Some of the unresolved death of the secret history of the ancient world, so today has been organized with the full story. 1. Salabanda skull. 2009 words. A group of Swedish archaeologists modeled a southeastern city of almost 8,000-year-old was named Knowledge Ardina find a settlement. There is a shallow lake buried beneath the stone was found in one of the mass graves. Kabaratite 11 skulls and found part of a skull. The amazing thing is, sometimes the scalps of 2 wooden cross was blocked. Others seem to see that the state had the same thought Sagulao. Pratnatapabaita still did not know the true identity of the unfortunate, and why they were given the grave. One woman to another woman, even within the skull came to the part about how they could not Hasurawa any Kulakana Ura. However, scientists have 2 theories to explain the situation and made up. There is no clear evidence in favor of these, however, in their hands. 1. If, after the rotten flesh of the dead were taken back, and on the cross, was buried a second time to instill scalps. Once a common practice in Sweden found that there was the Mesolithic. They may have been killed by the enemy in any war. After their scalps were taken to build on the cross as a symbol. 2. Death of King Tutankhamun. Some were killed. Tutankhamun again. 005 according to a CT scan, had died some time ago, broke his left leg. A DNA test conducted in Owanomyal or a microbial life found in her body. The idea is that, malaria and died kolar Tutankhamun diseases. In June, a group of 010 German researchers cyclists saw disease blamed as the cause of death. It was once thought that he might have been hit on the head and killed. A study of 005 proved to be the wrong idea. The researchers conclude that CT scans to examine the images. Tutankhamun parents were brother and sister. True Taikeo from any genetic parents to be responsible for his physical weakness is. Tutankhamun deaths also have been responsible for several diseases. Merv is in the midst of the syndrome, syndrome X-linked Mandelrita Erdeza, Furlica syndrome, Klinefelter syndrome, Androgena insensitivity syndrome, Iantelbic-Saura syndrome, Iauramataja axis and temporal lobe syndrome and syndrome craniosynostosiza epilepsy. 3. The first look communal clashes. Sudan's northern areas bordering the Sahara Desert Pratnatapabaita have studied the remains of several people. Jebel Sahaba Cemetery on the east side of the Nile remains matched the search. The most amazing thing, the skeletons of about 13,000 years of age and until now the oldest known history of sectarian clashes that samples of them being caught. And nearly a year, ranging from a few months collisions alone is estimated to research. Most of the dead died from the wounds made by the bank. Pratnatapabaita idea that, here, the human ancestors of today's African Americans. After so many years of conflict, and to find out the real cause is quite difficult. However, the researchers predict that, as a result of a natural disaster may lie in the areas surrounding the plants and animals die, the reservoir dries up. With water flowing into Bloodnadai take possession of their belief that the two sides clash. Bed Hakilo, 4. Kangrinda poisoning dead. Italy was one of the famous military leaders of the 14th century. Kangrinda della Scala. Verona, Padua, Treviso and Byzantia was under her. The medieval Italian poet Dante is now known, however, as the main sponsor. July 18, 1329. After a long struggle to win, Kangrinda Treviso visited. Within a few days, but there was fever, vomiting, diarrhea, he suffered was absolutely flat. Finally, only 4 days after the July succumbed to death at a military leader. A few days ago, drank dirty water. Kangrinda spring. Panic. Everyone assumes that the cause of his death. However, events took a turn. 004 in February. The actual cause of death, through a scientific experiment to unearth a stone coffin, was taken out of the body. Kangrinda. Sabaji. The researchers say. Kangrinda because the body was naturally mummified. So much so that it was in good condition. The body's internal organs tested was possible some. A sensational information that comes out from there. It is known that, after the death of Kangrinda, spring water actually was not, but there is one kind of plant called digitalis. When mixing it with food, early by Jasnoboda, causes symptoms such as vomiting and diarrhea. The higher the heart rate, affected individuals die off. And then comes the question of what Kangrinda committed suicide. Or was he murdered? If it is to kill, then who is the murderer? Milan and Venice. Kangrinda the murderer. To-do list can be a lot of name of the opponent. It is suspected that most of his power Mastinok's nephew, who came to power after the death of her. 5. Macever death. Now let's come back from Colorado. The mess in the middle of the 12th century was almost 40,000 people live in the central region of Verde. Just 3 decades, but over time the number dropped from 40,000 to absolutely zero. Almost everyone in the region to live in the midst of the 30-year-old died. But how? Radnatatbabidra, the skeleton found in the region, nearly 90% of the injuries were to the head Bajari. Between 1140 to 1180, and all of them died. Obviously, that is, that the death was due to their long-running conflict and horror. But why such conflicts, which bind a nation that totally wiped out? The region is located in the south of Rio de Janeiro. Grandeur people to live happily ever after in the history of the archaeologists who took more curious. According to the archaeologist Team Colvera, the inhabitants of Rio de Janeiro grandeur the good old policy with the exception of the work of each individual competence in a thachalo. Catching one fish, no one was looking, bunado some clothes. Everyone in the area became so dependent on each other. Essentially become dependent on each other and to the people involved in the conflict to refrain from commercially kept. But there is an exception in the case of residents of the Mesa Verde. Commercial relationship that has developed between them. As a result, they were engaged in their own selfish sentite. As a result, a deadly clashes occurred. However, be so nice, but guess Colera only. We cannot know the true story never. 6. The plight of the people, enemies of the Mayan civilization. Researchers at the University of Bonn at Mayan civilization in Mexico City, Uxie. Once the excavation was busy. Suddenly, they look for a place to get digging Kumrite, which was enough to wonder pills. Once upon a time a man-made reservoir in which they found the cave was used as the search. 4 skeleton they found in the cave, all the people were. Surprisingly, all Kankalari, the body was separated from the head. That was put to death by beheading. After the death of the cut and turning in their limbs were scattered in the Mayan people. The bones were scattered throughout the cave. It was not too many skeletons near the head and the body. Some skeletons that had become separated from the head and jaw. 1842 was a year old at the time of death of the deceased. 4 people were women and 13 men between the two. The rest gender could not be determined. Bratnatababida realized that this discovery, Maya civilization during the brutal killing of their enemies would adopt model. Teeth of one of the victims was wearing a kind of precious green stone, which is an indication of its prestige. But the unfortunate fate of the cruel deaths of 4 people to come down to their true identity or the actual reason remains unknown to this day.